Hey, Taco Tuesday fans, this is Christian Brindle.
And I am Glenn Shelton.
We came together and combined our forces to create something special for insurance agents called Taco Tuesday. Let's taco about insurance. My company, Christian Brindle Insurance Services,
and my company, Lead Heroes,
is here to bring you the latest and greatest news happening in the insurance industry today and eat some tacos while we do it.
If you enjoy the content that we put out on this podcast, feel free to leave us a review or subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes.
Without further ado, let's get into this episode of Taco Tuesday.
What happens?
Okay, so I just hit live. Should be live. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Hello. Welcome
Okay,
to.
so I see the live in six figure. Do you see the live in your group? Or I can check. I'm just curious if this works.
I got a notification that said you're live in my group.
Sweet.
Boom! Welcome to Taco Tuesday, officially live in 2 different Facebook groups, you guys.
First time ever.
First time ever. So welcome to a historical Taco Tuesday, and we have an incredible topic today. We already kind of had what would you even call that?
I would call that I would call that a philosophical off the record Taco Tuesday.
It really was.
Yeah, it really was.
So engaging that I couldn't stop debating you about this topic.
Right. Like my wife was like, okay, she was like trying to go to bed and she's like, will you shut up? And I'm like playing your voice messages. she's like, you're still talking about that? It was like an hour later. I'm like, it's good. It's good convo, baby. It's a good convo.
I kept waiting for you to stop responding. The only reason I was able to talk that late into the evening is because my wife wasn't home that night. Otherwise, I would have gotten the death threat way sooner than you. But before we get into what this topic was, that was a nice little teaser. They don't know what it is. What about tacos, bro? What do you got today?
Okay. So we're doing this new thing where our office manager has an app on her phone and she spins a wheel of taco goodness. So the taco goodness wheel today landed.
You muted yourself.
There we go.
A 90-year-old man, you muted.
Our unofficial sponsor is what I had to do.
Woo!
I had someone call me earlier, and I was like, oh, don't mind me. I'm pre-gaming for Taco Tuesday, and I'm like eating tacos on the phone. I'm like,
I had to hold back. I really wanted to eat at least one of these. I'm still on the homemade train. I'm kind of jealous. I did kind of want Taco Bell, but I mean, come on, homemade tacos, guys. Are you kidding me? Look at this. If you're listening to this, you can't see that I'm zesting with lime juice on these beautiful homemade beef, bean. We got tomato, lettuce, sour cream, bell peppers, cheese, flour, tortilla.
that looks really good.
So good.
I think the biggest question on this today is, those are flour tortillas, not corn tortillas?
Flour, not corn. What was Justin dropped a knowledge bomb last week on that? What was what he said? The way he said it was.
I don't remember.
I don't remember now.
Everyone should go buy his course just to see if he talks about that in there. So big time Brad Hannon did check me on something. I put, call center versus brick and mortar in the top. He said it's Brock and mortar, sir. So I apologize to the great Justin Brock on that. Didn't mean to disrespect his brand of the Brock and mortar.
It makes sense. It makes sense that he probably franchised or coined the term. Knowing Justin, I wouldn't be surprised.
And very few. I mean, I think that's a great transition into the topic in general.
Yeah.
I think so. Just to kind of fill the audience in, on what we were talking about over the weekend. I actually really like that I can see the comments here and I don't have to look on Facebook. I don't know, for some reason I really like that.
Well, we got to get everyone to register. It's nice to know who it is.
Right, for sure. But we were having a really good conversation about like, what is a better route for someone to go in terms of starting an agency? Like, is it better to do a traditional brick and mortar agency, Sorry, Justin. Or is it better to do like a call center type format and to really try to scale the call center up? And I feel like we got into a great conversation of kind of back and forth, because like you were more on the call center side.
Yeah.
I was more on the brick and mortar side. Not that I have anything against the call center model. Like I think like my opinion on it, oh, there he is.
There he is. It's like Beetlejuice. You say it 3 times and boom, he's there.
The Brock and Mortar. I apologize, right? Well, Brock and Mortar. I'll edit this. I'll throw it in the thumbnail. Everything. Brock and Mortar. But I actually think, in general, the call center model has a higher ceiling, right? Like I feel like it can scale to higher places than the brick and mortar. That's just my personal opinion. However, I'm a big believer that I think anytime you're putting limitations on your business model, I think, if you try to put it in a box, right? You're like, okay, so I have a brick and mortar agency. So now I can only do X, Y, and Z, or I can't do what this call center can do. I feel like that's when you lose. I feel like, if you believe that your brick and mortar agency can be, a humongous revenue generator on the same pillar of a call center, then I can kind of see it maybe being equivalent. But like I feel like they're very different. It's like apples and oranges in terms of business models. And so
making a mess today, dude. I'm embarrassed. I'm filling my beard with tacos for anyone watching this.
So Justin said they're like Facebook leads versus organic Google. That's a great analogy, actually.
Yeah, it's not. And to preface this whole conversation, because I'm sure Christian and I are going to get into this, we're probably going to say things that are a bit biased. Again, Christian's coming more from the brick and mortar side of it. I spend most of my time in a call center environment, whether it's my call center or I'm dealing with an insurance call center, the agents who are actually selling. And I personally have worked in a brick and mortar before. I know a ton of brick and mortar agents. So I feel like, and Christian also on the flip side of it, Christian's done tons of telesales. So I think we both have like a pretty good idea of both sides of it. But dude, you didn't, come on, I got to see it. What is it? You're like sneakily eating off camera there. Come on, I just got taco in my beard, bro. What do you
I don't want it to spill all over me. But it will. Okay.
So Doritos Locos, that's my favorite show. But that's kind of my preface to this kind of debate we're going to have. And obviously, if you guys are watching this live or even after the live, feel free to add your comments below about what you think about a call center insurance agency versus a brick and mortar insurance agency and how they differ and maybe some of the pros and cons. So, to kind of start, I'm a huge fan of efficiency. And when it comes to the number of presentations that an agent can make in a day, having that call center environment, typically a call center or a telesales agent is going to be able to make 2 to 3 times or maybe even more presentations in a day than someone selling face-to-face in that office environment. Now, I think kind of the catch-22 here, where the office agent or the brick and mortar agent has a potential advantage over that call center agent, is where you start getting into some of the seminar marketing.
Right.
If you have a group of people that you're presenting to face-to-face, well, now you could potentially leapfrog that telesales agent. Even if that telesales agent is able to make 30 presentations in a day, you might have a room of 50 people there. And if you do it right, I've seen seminar marketing where it can be extremely advantageous. So there's lots of variables to kind of both sides of the equation. At the end of the day, overall, though, I still kind of lean towards the call center because I think it is more efficient on a day-to-day basis.
Right. I mean, I kind of look at it this way. I look at them as very different. Like I said, I think that the call center model is probably going to have a higher ceiling in general, like on average, right? If you took the average call center, combined it with the average brick and mortar. The other thing with brick and mortar is it's going to have a much less overhead, far less overhead than a call center model, right? Obviously, they have more retention as well of their clients in general. At least that's been my observation. Like, it's I've talked to a lot of people that run call centers that their retention is like around 60-70%, whereas like a traditional brick and mortar should have probably at the bare minimum, unless you're doing nothing but D-SNPs, but right, a bare minimum of probably 90% retention. Like we probably have, without knowing the exact numbers, probably somewhere between 95 to 98% client retention year in and year over. But so I look at them as very different than each other. It's very interesting. The other thing that somebody mentioned, that I think it was Tracy that mentioned in the comments, that I think is relevant and really important to mention, is you can run a brick and mortar and have call center like tendencies, right? Sure. Like you can do kind of like even like almost like a hybrid, I should say, maybe. I don't know.
Are you taking my term? Did you really just take my term before I could say it? Okay, let the record show here. I'm the one that called the hybrid model a thing before Christian said the word hybrid.
Okay, fair enough. I was taking notes when we were having our conversation.
That's what I see that, stealing my ideas. But no, I personally know a very successful hybrid model. Now, it was a very small agency. We're talking 3 to 5 agents, but they were very active in their local community. They got foot traffic that came in off the street, not a ton, but they did. They were doing networking stuff with, again, local groups that they could get involved in. I don't know if I would say they ever really did seminars, some of these group meetings potentially, but then the day-to-day activities were almost all telephonic. Like they're not structuring their day-to-day where it's like, how many appointments can I set for people to come in? It was really structured as, this is a telesales operation. And so, if before I had seen that, if you had asked me if I thought a hybrid model was even possible, I'd probably question if it was even possible. But to see a small scale environment work well, I do think it's possible to have a hybrid model. My curiosity though is there a point where that model doesn't really scale, or where there's too much confliction between the day-to-day operations and, okay, well, this is the call center side of the business. This is the face-to-face or the brick and mortar side of the business. Is there a confliction there where it's not going to scale? I mean, North Star is a great example of a huge call center environment. I mean, when I saw that video, the walkthrough of North Star, it blew my mind of what's actually possible. And their calls, I mean, I don't know, 300 agents? I don't know. Maybe it's bigger than that, but the idea of trying to take a model that big and have a hybrid on it where they have a huge local presence on top of what they're already doing, I don't know if that would make sense. So I do think you kind of, maybe at scale, I think you kind of probably have to pick like what direction you're going.
Right. And another thing to piggyback on that too is like, at least in the Medicare space, a lot of times call center contracts are completely different than
That's a huge point. Yeah, that's a huge point.
And so like if you're contracted, let's say as a brick and mortar, and you really lean into maybe being a call center, and you're structured like a call center, and you look like a call center, and you smell like a call center and everything, but you don't have call center contracts, you're probably screwing yourself because the call center contracts are a little bit more advantageous from my understanding, in terms of maybe just the individual independent agent contract. I think it's interesting because I look at the brick and mortar model as more of like relationship selling with your clients, especially for the senior market, right? Whereas the call center model, not to say that there's not call centers out there that do relationship building and relationship selling, but I think for the most part, for most call centers, you'll find it's probably much more of a transactional thing, right? It's like somebody, ordering something off of Amazon, except for you're calling Amazon kind of thing, instead And whereas like, someone goes to their local grocery store and they build a great relationship with, the people that work at the grocery store, the clerk or whatever. And like, I feel like it's, hang on, I'm reading a comment from Mr. Brian Tobias. It says Medicare Advantage call center contracts are less lucrative financially to the agency. Oh, okay. I did not know that. I'd heard something different.
That's and again, I think when it comes to contracting, I think it's so specific on the situation, the upline, what the distribution looks like on a quarterly, annual basis, how long. So that seems, I don't know. That seems like kind of a blanket statement to me because I've seen so many different contracts in so many different ways, but I think it is specific to that agency. It's crazy how many, like every time I think that I've seen I've seen every call center contract that you could think of, all of a sudden I'll see a contract that I didn't even know existed. Because what happens is, these groups form and then they'll form new types of contracts where, the model is different. LOA, marketing agreements, you name it. I've seen all sorts of creative contracts that these IMOs, FMOs, NMOs will put together to entice people. So I don't know. That's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like you can definitely probably, with the call center model, it's all about, ramping up production for each individual agent. I've heard a lot of call centers tell, owners and people that run call centers say that the goal is for each agent to sell 2 to 3 policies a day, something like that.
Yeah.
I've heard others that are the numbers higher than that, but I think that's kind of the consensus for a lot of call centers. Whereas like if you're in a brick and mortar, that it might more be like 1 or 2 a day, or something like that. It just kind of depends. Like for me, we were doing probably 70% face-to-face before the pandemic, but it was all in office traffic, right? People coming into our actual office and sitting down. So there wasn't any like windshield time. I feel like that's the other thing too. When like people think of brick and mortar, they feel like they picture some guy on the freeway and there's like a million dead bugs on his windshield,
That was me, dude, for years, driving all over. Yeah.
That's me too, for sure. Like that's how I started. But I feel like when you really grow a brick and mortar to a place that it's established, it is a lot more efficient than maybe one might originally think, because everybody's coming to you. And then when they're not coming to you, you're doing stuff over the phone. Like we're probably now 60-70% over the phone in terms of sales.
So, and this is like a whole nother part of the conversation that we didn't even get into before, but I remember when captive Mutual of Omaha agents were still a thing. And for some of you Taco Tuesday listeners who haven't missed an episode, you might remember that I actually started Lead Heroes working inside a dead Mutual of Omaha office, which that whole
craziest story I've ever heard.
It really is a crazy story, but I talked to some of these captive agents that were still alive and around at the time. And I think another side of this that, again, we didn't even talk about yet is the trust level when you have someone come into your office and they sit down with you at your desk. I think you're talking about a trust level. You have such high credibility at that point. They're in your place of business. They're looking around at your office. If you have, a professional office, they're thinking, okay, this guy's legit. They're not going to be worried about talking about specifics, whether that's health stuff, maybe that's getting into some of the financial stuff. And that's what this agent at Mutual of Omaha really capitalized on, was like, yeah, we're going to take care of your health stuff. We'll get your Medicare taken care of. But that was like secondary. Like she almost, this agent in particular, I remember she was just kind of like, yeah, we'll do that, but let's talk about long-term care and let's talk about your financial situation for retirement. And let's talk about, a potential fit for annuities, variable annuities, like the whole 9. And that was like her primary focus. And I think from a call center environment, if you were trying to replicate that same conversation, I think it would be much, much harder if you're trying to build that trust into financial products and some of these bigger, life insurance policies or long-term care policies. And so that's an upside that I think brick and mortar has that call center doesn't have.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. That's very true. Like one thing my dad always told me when I was a new agent, when I was like in the year into the business, is he would always say, the office does a lot of the work for you. The office sells the policy, or the office does a lot of that selling for you.
I believe it.
And I think that for me, like people say that I was, incredibly benefited by being able to work with my dad, and that is one particular way that it was very beneficial, to have a place that was kind of like our home base and someone could come in and sit down and meet with me. Although in the early years, I didn't understand that. I didn't understand to take advantage of that. And that was something that was a benefit of me. I felt like I had to go to every house. And so I wasn't even capitalizing on this beautiful office that we had, and having people come in.
Right.
I was still going to them, and they never saw the office, and it didn't do anything for me. It was like a place to just go every day.
Right.
I mean, nowadays I have people come into the office infinitely more than I ever did before, and I really go to no one's house,
Right.
because I feel like it's all about, like you said, that efficiency. I feel like the brick and mortar model can be very efficient. I think if it's done the right way. I feel like so many people look at it like, they put 30,000 miles on their car every year, that kind of thing. And but at the same time, it's probably much easier to get traffic and lead flow and volume at scale with a call center in general. It's just, it's very different. It is very different.
Also, something that I keep thinking about too while we're having this conversation is LOA agents versus non-LOA agents. And I feel like the call center model is really geared towards LOA. I feel like the most successful call center owners that I talk to, they've got LOA agents, they're paying them a salary. They're giving these agents very competitive income without ownership in the client. So that model really structures it to where the call center owner can win big, but also the agent can win big, because not every agent wants to scale a giant company, right? I mean, that's something that I always thought was silly at first, but the reality is the majority of agents would do well with a nice LOA contract versus trying to go out and hunt on their own every day. And I kind of feel like it's almost the flip side for brick and mortar, where it's almost kind of structured more towards non-LOA agents, where it's a traditional hierarchy. Hey, once you get your production to a certain level, we can move your contracts up, yada, yada, yada. I don't know. What do you think about that? What do you think about LOA agents in this whole scenario?
I think you're spot on. I feel like when it comes to brick and mortars, you'll see a lot of brick and mortars that are maybe like a 4 or 5 man agency. And, they'll have one person that's maybe a GA in the Medicare Advantage world, and that GA will be their leader, and that person has them contracted at street level, and the only thing they make when that agent makes a sales overrides, but they're providing office space, they're providing this, they're providing that. I usually find they're not usually going to provide a lot of leads to those people. Like, they'll provide some, and they'll help them with some marketing tools and things like that. But and it's kind of interesting, because that's how my dad always did it with agents. When I first started out, that's how he did it with me, but that's how he did it with everybody. Like, he had tons of people in the office over the years, and he always set them up at street level. And I think, he would teach them how to knock on doors and grassroots and, cold call for Medicare supplements compliance police. And, but that's what he would teach them. He wasn't necessarily like breaking the bank to get lead orders and marketing dollars for them.
Right.
But he was justified in doing that, because he was like, okay, I'm teaching you, I'm training you, I'm giving you an office, and I'm making sure that you when we do have certain situations and opportunities pop up, that you're involved with it. But you'll see more agencies like that, I feel like, in the brick and mortar world. At least that's my perception. Than you will call centers call center is definitely not like that, but you won't see as many brick and mortars that maybe have the LOA model. I think that's becoming more of a trend really lately.
So to counter my own point, Florida, of course, for those of you listening or watching, Florida's like call center capital of the world, right? There's probably good old Florida, which I know you have there's a special spot in your heart, Christian, I know, for Florida. You probably have a tattoo. I'm guessing there's a hidden tattoo.
Whoa.
Maybe you've got like the Florida Keys too, like you did all the
right on the neck.
Right.
Right on the
From nip to nip. Is it just Florida? I don't know, guys. I haven't seen the nips, but to get back to my point here, Florida is obviously like call center capital of the world. I guess out of curiosity, why do you think that is? Is it just the environment because so many kind of breeded more? Is there certain rules or laws there? Is it what is it you think that really triggered Florida to become call center capital of America, essentially?
Well, I feel like Florida is becoming more and more of a haven for businesses in general. I feel like Florida and Texas, because they're very easy on businesses, right? They're just not as hardcore as maybe like a California will. They have no state income tax, right? They have, they're very friendly. It's a very friendly state for businesses.
Does Florida have income tax? State income tax?
No. There's no state income tax.
That's probably a big draw. Well,
that was a big part of why I went there in the first place, because I was like, oh no, state income tax. But then they got different taxes.
That's how it always, and that's how it always. Everyone talks about the state income tax like it's like you can sneak around, but they'll get you somewhere else, guys. I promise you, that's how it always is. But anyways, to get back to my point here, so Florida, call center capital of the world. I did hear that there was a call center in Florida where the structure was not LOA, where the call center was really like, hey, come into the office, we'll give you a desk, we'll give you a computer, we can set you up on a dialer, we can get you leads or tell you where to buy leads. And it was all, hierarchy, traditional contracting, come build your book of business. And apparently that call center did really well in that model, which kind of was surprising to me because, again, I'm so used to the LOA model where it is, hey, come in, we'll get you a salary, we'll get you inbound phone calls, we'll get you a commission, we'll get you a bonus, we'll get you benefits. It seems like that's the go-to model. So it was interesting to hear that there was supposedly the successful call center model that kind of went against the grain. But again, I'm sure there's exceptions to brick and mortar too, right? I'm sure there's brick and mortar where they're LOA agents, they're getting a salary, and they're getting spoon-fed everything,
Yeah, for sure. Like, this is what I've learned over the years. Anytime I feel like something is a certain way or it's a certain model, I find someone or something that kind of goes against the grain and it, is the complete opposite and it works, in terms of business model, a structure, philosophy. It could be the most ABC like, duh kind of thing, everybody knows this. And then someone will be like, well, I did it completely opposite and it worked really well. Like
100%.
And I think that comes down to, and someone commented on here earlier, I thought it was a very good, and valid point. It really depends on your personality, and your personality in terms of like having your business shape at and be molded around what your personality is. And that's kind of where you get into a place where your business can be a hybrid or have features of both and that kind of thing. I think, for me, I didn't even really think about LOA agents in brick and mortars until I saw what Justin Brock's agency does. He's the one that comes to mind for me because, their traditional brick and mortar, like they operate, it's so much like a brick and mortar as much as any company I've ever observed from afar. But all the agents in the office, from my understanding, are LOA agents, so it's very much to where there's no cookie cutter model, I guess, if you will.
That's like one of the biggest red flags for me. I'm holding a pretend red flag, you guys, is when someone says, when someone says this is the way to do it and there's no other way to do it, I jump on that person almost every single time because I'm like, that's bullshit. I guarantee you there's someone doing it differently who can have an equal or greater amount of success. You don't have to buy one type of lead. You don't have to sell one type of way. You don't have to sell one carrier, one policy, one type of policy. Like there's so many niches that you can kind of carve out within this whole senior insurance realm. One thing that, and you know, to Justin Brock's point, which we had talked about in our conversation before, you know, I think what's really setting him apart that I don't see a lot of agencies doing at all is that local branding that he's spending money on. I mean, I think a lot of agencies could dominate their local markets if they started spending a significant marketing percentage of their marketing budget on local branding. Did you see the truck, dude? I was so jealous of that truck. Yeah. I want a truck now. I want a van. I don't care I'll just drive it around town. I don't know. That was sick. I told him that too. Did you? What do you think about that?
I could be wrong. So if this is not the case, Justin, feel free to check me. But there was a guy that I don't know him very well personally, and I'm not sure if he was either working for Kellogg Insurance Marketing or if he was contracted with him, but he had like a bus, like a Medicare bus. I don't know if you remember, but like
he just loads them on. He's like, get on the bus.
It was like a bus. It was like a school bus. And it was like Medicare bus. And I took a picture of it during AP because I saw it in a parking lot. And I posted it in Six Figure Medicare Agent. Anybody can go find it. It's in there somewhere if you can track it down. But I posted that, and then I think some other people started posting it around and things like that. I think that's where he got the idea from that guy.
Right.
But I remember seeing that, and I was like, and it seemed to me like there were people like lined up outside of the bus. I was like kind of really quickly moving by, so I didn't get a good look at it. But it almost seemed like they were like, it was like a party bus for seniors. It looked like a party bus for seniors with maybe take the pole out or anything like that in the middle. But it was, I feel like that branding, you can do that in a local market, like you said, and just completely take over and just kind of strangle out all the competition.
Don't compete nationally.
And that's much harder to do with a call center because the call center is so much. It has to be national. Yeah, it's got to be coast to coast, which is much harder to do.
Trying to do a national brand, like the sort of competition you have when you try to do a branding marketing campaign nationally, you might as well light the cash on fire because you're not going to compete with the branding of Humana, Aetna. I mean, you're competing with the carriers essentially at that point, who are dropping billions every year into national brand. I mean,
right.
Listen, if you're at that type of size, maybe it does make sense to start running some national branding. But for most agencies, you know, your city, your state, you're part of the state, like maybe a multi-city region where you could dominate your local market. And that's really what I think kudos to him, wherever he got the bus idea. My first thought when I saw the van, I was thinking like food truck. And then I was thinking like, what if you like marketed your insurance? And I know this is like, we talked about Taco Tuesday. Like we want to have our own taco truck, which it will happen. Yes, it will happen at one point. But it's like, what if you drove around and, I mean, I don't know, the compliance police will probably chime in and be like, you can't give out free lunch. You can't give out free lunch. And then
over $15, Glenn? Is it over $15? Is this taco more than $15?
Is this the Department of Insurance? These guys are talking about giving away lunch and selling insurance. This can't be legal.
Each taco was an average of $15.25. I want Glenn's ass on a platter.
Give me the Department of Justice right now. I need a warrant for his arrest.
Get me President Biden on the phone.
Sir, is this Kamala Harris? No? Give me Kamala Harris. We're putting these guys in jail right now. They did not use the right pronouns.
Hello, police. Police, there's a Medicare van down here. You're selling too expensive tacos. Get down here. Hurry.
One point that I spaced on when we were talking that I really wanted to make, when you're talking about personality wise and like which business format fits your personality. And I know I'm pretty sure I've told this story on Taco Tuesday before, but it definitely makes sense to tell it again here. One of the most successful final expense agents that I've ever known, and maybe there's some that are in the same region or not same region, but like same level of success as this guy. You know, he was I'm pretty sure he's in that $500,000 on his own pen. You know, there's a few guys that come to mind when I say that, but this guy in particular, this was before the pandemic. He saw the business was shifting telephonically. And he was like, I'm going to just get on the phone and start banging out these FE deals. And in my mind, and he told me this before he tried it, and in my mind, I'm like, if anyone could do it, it'd be him, right? I'm like, this dude sold more final expense than just about anybody I know. Like literally, he's probably in the top 1% of final expense producers ever on his own pen. And, you know, I kind of kept up with him. And then like 6 weeks down the road, I was like, hey, how'd it go? I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, I hate it. He's like, I hated it. It didn't work. He's like, I'm back in the field right now. He's like, I'm selling right now. And so that was kind of a wake up call for me too, because it's like, you could literally be the best at the model that you're running. It does not have anything to do with like once you switch to a different model, that doesn't ensure success. Like there's no guarantee at success. If you're a great telesales agent, you might suck in person, vice versa. I think it's its own unique animal, you know, when these different business models, there's no one size fits all, and you're definitely not going to crush every model either, you know? For sure.
Like it's so crazy to me how people can be so great at one aspect of their business and struggle in another. Like I'll tell this story. In the last week, you got on the phone with me and listened to me try to call and do final expense deals, and I'm bad at it. I'm no good at it. You know, like I'm one of the best Medicare salesperson people I've ever met. You know, especially for Medicare Advantage. That's really what I'm really like phenomenal at. And I just, you know, when I try to do FE, like that whole day on the phone, I sold one FE policy, like maybe a $35 a month premium, nothing huge or anything like that. Like it was just not a good day. And it's just one of those things where like, you know, not everyone's good at everything.
I wouldn't say you're bad at it either. I think you're being harsh on yourself. I think you needed to be pushier. I think you need to push harder. Yeah. And I think in general, and I was just talking to an agent today about the difference, because I had an agent that's new. And he was like, I'm looking at doing both final expense and Medicare. I'm literally talking to this guy this morning, and I'm talking about, well, here's kind of the differences between the two. And I think final expense, you have to be much pushier than Medicare. It's more of a consultative sale. It's like, hey, I've been doing this for a long time. These are the pros. These are the cons. You know, this is what I would recommend based on your situation. Final expense is like, hey, Mrs. Jones, you don't have anything? You're going to let your family down like that? Are you kidding me? Come on, let's get you signed up right now. You know, like that's an exaggeration, but the reality is like you really do have to be pushy sometimes with these people and be like, you have nothing in place when you die, your family has to pay all of your expenses that are net, whatever that looks like, cremation, burial, you know, maybe there's, you know, obviously not every debt goes away when you're dead either. There's some debt like taxes. You got to, you know, if you have a spouse, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that could get carried over. And so I think that's really the animal. There were some things I'll kind of share since you brought it up. I really liked the transitional question. You know, Christian was having small talk with his clients. This is like behind the scenes, guys. This is gold Taco Tuesday right now. This is super juicy. But you know, Christian's having small talk with his clients, right? So he's like, hey, checking in on you. We want to see, make sure your policy's still working for you. Yada, yada, yada. Great little small talk. And then the line that he used that I loved, like I honestly felt like it was almost like Wolf of Wall Street status. Like I just felt like you were hooking him every time with this line. You're like, hey, can I ask you a question while I've got you on the phone?
Yeah.
Everyone said yes, dude. Every time nobody said no. Every single person that you asked that to said yes. And so they're like, the whole point, like you have to have people saying yes to get to another yes. So like that's a huge win. And you're also transitioning out of the Medicare conversation. They understand that this is probably going somewhere different because you're segueing. So I really like that a lot. Like I would steal that in a minute. If I was an agent and I'm on the phone, I would start using that right away. Like, hey, well, I've got you on the phone, Mrs. Jones. Can I ask you a question? Can I ask you something really fast?
It comes from the place that like, and what, to put it into perspective for anybody that's listening, like what we were doing was like, I was calling up existing clients of mine on the Medicare space and trying to talk to them about FE. So I made the initial call to just check in on them and be like, how's your plan going? Everything working okay? So you want them, you don't want them to catch on that the reason why you're calling is not to check on them. That's really what it is.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, and part of it too is we got a lot of voicemails. I feel like that was part of it too. We got a lot of voicemails. We needed like an auto dialer or something like that. And I was picking like specific clients out of a list or something like that too. But yeah, I mean, I feel like in terms of like, and you'll always hear things too when it comes to telesales, like going back to like the brick and mortar versus call center thing, you'll hear certain stereotypes about telesales. Like you can't sell direct mail leads over the phone, and you can't sell final expense over the phone. Some people, like you just said, that example you gave with that agent, that's a phenomenal face-to-face final expense agent. He has the phone. Yep. Like last year during the pandemic, I wanted to put that to bed that you couldn't sell direct mail over the phone. Like I ordered and there's a video on Six Figure Medicare Agent's YouTube channel about this. I ordered a direct mail drop with lead concepts. I got a 1.2 response rate. I just did a small little 1,000-piece mailer, and I got 12 leads back. Out of those 12, and like 3 or 4 of them didn't have phone numbers or something like that. Out of those 12, I closed 6 people. Now, granted, they were duals. Some of them fell off. By the end of the year, that does happen. But like that, I just did that from my kitchen table during the pandemic when our office was shut down because I wanted to prove a point to where, stereotypes are just that, stereotypes. If it's a lead, you can sell it over the phone or you can sell it face-to-face. It just kind of comes more down to your personal preference and your personality and your style, probably more than anything.
I think it takes a greater attention span to succeed in a call center. Because I think like the natural salesperson isn't a desk jockey, right? So I think that's kind of a natural barrier to that. Like that guy this final expense agent, to go back to this guy, he had his presentation down to 25, 30 minutes. So literally within 30 minutes of him entering the house, he's either walking out with the app or he's walking out before that because he knows it's not a deal. So when you think about like the pace that person has now become routine to try to take that and put it behind a desk, it's not going to it doesn't make like it's like a sprinter versus someone trying to run long distance, right. Yeah, you have to be athletic to do both, but it's really different. It's different muscles, different training. And that's really how like face-to-face versus telesales is. What do you think if a brand new agent's coming? So like the guy I talked to this morning, he was on the fence about all of it. He was like, I'll sell over the phone. I'll sell face-to-face. I'll sell final expense. I'll sell med sup. Like literally, he could have gone any direction. Where do you think it makes most sense if you want an agent to have longevity in the industry? Where do you think they should start? Because again, we're kind of talking about the different models, whether you're independent or you're an agency owner. Where do you think longevity comes from?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the answer I'm about to give is the best answer or if it's really the right advice.
This is, by the way, guys, if you're watching, this is the blood of new agents that I'm drinking. This is how I stay young. This is how I stay young. I take the blood of new agents. Taco Tuesday, just on ice. Just keeps me looking young and fresh. But anyways, continue, Christian.
I want to look spicy for you all, so I need to bask in the blood of new agents.
Just pour it on my head. Ah, yes.
But usually what I'll do, like if I'm training somebody that I feel like is a brand spanking new agent, like let's say they've never done it, let's say they're newly licensed, which I don't take a lot of those anymore these days because it's like with everything I got going on there, it's tough to help them because they need so much, right off the bat, and sometimes it's more than I can give at this point in my career, but. What I'll tell a new agent that's just brand new like that is I typically tell them, I think the best place for you to start, like I'll give you an example. I have an agent of mine, he's working with me, he's 65, and he's done sales forever. The
agent is 65.
Right, yeah. And he used to sell PNC maybe 8 to 9 years ago. He sells mattresses, he sells all kinds of stuff, but he's a good salesperson. Like he's got the
right.
gift of gab, right? He's got that.
Yes.
Good communicator. He's good at articulating himself. So like I think he can do it. But he's never really done sales over the phone like this, at least as far as I know. I told him, I was like, I think if I were you, I might start out just going to people's houses, because he doesn't have an office. So I'd be like, I think I'd start off going to people's houses and get comfortable, get some sales under your belt, get your confidence up a little bit, get some money coming in. And then once you feel like you've really gotten good at that and mastered that, then it might be more comfortable for you to transition into over the phone if you want to. I feel like it's harder to learn over the phone than it is face-to-face. I do believe that. And part of that is because I started face-to-face. Maybe if I started specifically from the get-go doing over the phone, it would have been easier for me. But it was hard for me to start to learn how to do over the phone. Like it took me a couple of years to really understand the differences and kind of, pinpoint what I needed to do differently than what I was doing face-to-face. So a lot of times when I'm working with a brand new agent, I kind of do encourage them. Maybe it's not a bad idea to start out doing face-to-face and then work your way up to phone sales later on, but like just to get some confidence, because there's so many agents that come in and get licensed, appointed, certified, and then they'll never sell anything. And they're trying to do it over the phone right from the get-go, and they're just getting murdered, getting slaughtered.
I'd want to highlight that point really fast. There's an incredible amount of agents who get licensed, get contracted, and they never sell shit. It's an incredible number of agents out there, you guys. Like, just so everyone's aware, like that's a very real, true stat. Like, it's probably astounding the percentage that's come in, get contracted, and then sell less than 5 apps their whole life.
Right, and a lot of it, in my opinion, I think it comes from they're not doing it in such a simple way that they can get some wins. Because I feel like what the difference between an agent that makes it in the business, that lasts long term, and an agent that doesn't, is I feel like the agent that lasts, I feel like for one, they're more persistent, they probably work harder, they're more, all that stuff is true. But I think another component to that's not talked about enough is the new agent that, they experience some wins, right? They experience some wins, they get some direct deposits, right? They have that dopamine go in their head when they make a sale, like, that matters. You can't just eat shit all the time and want to stay, And so I feel like when I'm training a new agent, that is in my mind. That component is in my mind. I'm like, I think you need to get your first sale. Like that's the first benchmark right now. Sell one. And I feel like the easiest way for someone to do that right off the bat is to do it face to face. And so that's usually what I teach a new agent. It might not be what everybody agrees with, but.
Well, but like to go back to the brick and mortar versus call center, like the turnover for call centers has to be higher, right? Wouldn't you think?
Gotta be.
Like if you had identical compensation and you ran the models side by side, same contracts, same leads, 100 agents in brick and mortar, 100 agents in call center, I would think the failure rate at that call center has to be twice what the brick and mortar is. Brick and mortar has 40% fail out, and the call center after a year, maybe it has 70% fail out. Obviously it depends like what qualifies as a fail out, but in general, selling over the phone is much more difficult, I think, for the average person, especially if you don't know what you're doing. And I've heard that a lot from agents before. It's like, hey, go sell face-to-face, And then once you get that, take a year, sell Medicare face-to-face. Once you feel like you have a good grasp on it, then you can start selling over the phone. I don't disagree with that, but I don't know, part of me wonders if you train someone, because the best agent is someone who's brand new. They're moldable.
Right.
They don't have bad habits. They're willing to listen. They're going to learn. I'm wondering if maybe the best thing to do is to take that person and try to mold them into a telesales agent. If it's a call center model business, maybe that's the best way to do it, because maybe trying to just, transplant a successful field agent, maybe that's actually harder than if you just like compress someone into a molded model and said, hey, watch this, read this, pitch like this, like boo, 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 just like spoon feed an agent in a call center environment. I don't know.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of validity to that for sure. Like it's interesting because I've had agents that will work with me that, they'll want to do phone sales. I'll tell them, I'll be like, okay, I'm like, let's do it. And, we'll do some training. Maybe they'll even listen to me do a call or two, on something like they'll be, silent on a three-way call, or they'll be on a Zoom call or something, and they'll listen to me dial or something.
Right.
And they just pick it right up and run with it, to where, to me, I feel like they're exceptional. And with or without my training, they would have done good. I do feel like there's those people out there. I also, and some of those people too would not be good for face-to-face. Like I had an agent that was working with me recently that, she's a female, she's a pretty small female, and she had this anxiety of going to people's houses because she felt like she was vulnerable. And I completely understand that, right? Sure. Like, I don't have that same fear going to someone's house. Not that I'm the biggest person, but like, who's going to want me? Who's going to want to keep me? When I go into a house.
Dude, I've been in some houses, bro. I've been in some houses.
Silence of the Lambs story is the only one I got like that, but I completely understood where she was coming from. So I do feel like it's an agent by agent situation, but I do feel like I find myself giving that advice to more new agents than not, just because I feel like the agents that might do better off starting out with telesales, I feel like there's less of those around.
Right.
But you could make the argument too that like if you start them off right off the bat and they're learning telesales and that's all that they know, then sure, certainly. I just worry about them. I just worry about having a higher turnover rate for the agent, I guess, is where
I wonder if there's a way where you could like almost like a personality test. There's a way that you could qualify a new agent and then be like, okay, your better fit is, I wonder what the best way to qualify someone before they come into the industry. The only reason I feel like I transitioned to phone, because I did do phone sales for a while. The only reason I feel like it was relatively easy for me is because I spent so much time appointment setting for myself that I got super comfortable on the phone. I mean, I literally set my own appointments for 3 years before I got into telesales. And so like, I was so used to like, knowing when to pause, your tonality, like all those little tiny things. Like I had already ironed all of that out when I was doing my own appointment setting. So transitioning to telesales, it wasn't a huge jump for me. So, you know, maybe there's a hybrid model there too, where they can get their, you know, cut their teeth. Like you said, I think getting those easy wins, building that momentum, I think that's what can really separate some of these losers from winners as far as like agents failing out of the business goes. So maybe there's like a hybrid model there where in their first 90 days, they are learning some telesales, but they're also doing face-to-face, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, let me put another variable into this too. I feel like it'd be far easier for me to teach an agent telesales if they were here in my office with me all day. Like I do believe that, you know, like I've had much more luck being able to teach somebody phone sales when I can sit here, I can listen to their calls, you know, I can listen to them from the other room, you know, I can get up and walk in there and be like, hey, don't say that, say this, you know.
Shut up! What are you saying?
Yeah, like that is very helpful for me to teach somebody phone sales. Like, and same probably reigns true for face to face. I can you know, you can go on ride-alongs with people and things like that if you're local with them. But
would you classify your model as a hybrid then?
Probably, yeah. I mean, I don't know what I'd call it if it wasn't that. Like, because about a year ago we were probably doing 70% face to face, but it was all in office. Like 99.9%.
I mean, the most recent agent that you were training, right? Wasn't it really a hybrid training? Weren't you basically training? I remember you telling me, you're like, I'm in a house. Like, didn't you believe? Like, yeah. Like I remember talking. I'm like, okay, he's in a house right now. Like, and then at the same time, I remember you telling me you were training the agent. Also, like you sounded like you were really training both sides of it.
I was trying to get her some momentum. Was what I was trying to do. So like, you know, she sold 7 apps while she was with me. 6 of them were over the phone. The one that I texted you on was the only one that was face to face, but there were some face to face. And so like, we were just trying different things to see what she would be more comfortable with. And it turned out, you know, like, probably not the greatest example, but like,
hey, not every agent makes it. We already discussed that.
But like, you know, we started out trying out different things, you know, to where like we did like an educational event, you know, we set up a table and everything like that. We tried to go door knocking, you know, with old direct mail leads and things like that. We were doing things over the phone. Like we were doing a mixture of different things. I think that's probably the only reason she sold as much as even she did, was because we were attacking it from every angle. But yeah, I mean, you know, if I was to bring an agent into my office, let's say tomorrow, and I was going to teach them, I'd probably teach them a mixture. Like most of the face-to-face training that we were doing were people coming into the office. And so I would like an agent of mine to know how to do both, you know, to do it over the phone, but also be able to not like make weird faces when they're face-to-face with someone. I wouldn't want them to go like, you know, or whatever. Right. Somebody. I'd want them to get that body language corrected as well, because we do a mixture. Like it's still probably 60-70% over the phone, but that means it's still 30 to 40% face-to-face, and we got to get that part of it down too. And so that's probably why I was training both. But I would say you'd have to call what we do a hybrid, because we do a mixture.
I would. If someone asked me, like if before we had this conversation, if someone was like, hey, is Christian a call center or is he selling, you know, base? I'd say he does both. I would say you do both pretty efficiently. So what do you think Christian Brindle Insurance Services looks like 2024? What model do you feel like you're really pursuing? Let's assume you've scaled up. Let's say you've grown. What's the model look like?
So for me, the long-term vision of the company is, you know, I want to build a field sales agent team in office and kind of doing the same kind of thing that we do now, because it's been very effective in, you know, terms of getting people to come into the office, maybe doing some events, maybe doing some things over the phone, doing a mixture of things. The best way I can explain my approach for getting new business is I try everything. I try everything. Like I don't really put myself in a box, really. Like I love to try new things and try different approaches. And sometimes they really work and sometimes they only really work for a little bit of time, and I'll milk that for that time period that I can. But I picture that. And I picture us long-term at growing, as that part of the business grows, also growing the FMO side of our business and working with more agents and contracting agents and agencies and things like that. That's kind of what to me, the vision is of the company.
I think diversification is huge. If the pandemic's taught us anything, the people who were at least semi-competent in phone sales had a huge leg up over everybody else. So, some people might listen to what you just said and think like, oh, he doesn't have a clear direction. But I think it's a great idea, because you don't know what's going to get hot. You don't know if, things could change on any number of levels where one model could become significantly more profitable for you than another model. And I think pursuing a little bit of everything and kind of figuring out what's working when, and then also maybe being able to tailor that to your agent, I think that's huge. I really think that's a model for success.
Yeah, for sure. Like, one quote that I repeat all the time, and I always want to not steal it. But Justin, to go back to him, Justin Brock, he always says everything works a little, nothing works a lot. I believe that.
I do too.
I embody that. And so like I was talking to an agent probably last month, and they were like, what do you do to get business? I was like, I was starting to think about it. I'm like, well, this month we're doing custom calling with Lead Heroes. I'm like, we're doing direct mail, we're doing Facebook ads, we're doing a seminar, we're doing. I'm just listing off like all these things. I get to like 10 different things. I'm like, I just bought like 300 age leads. I'm like, and I'm just going through all these things, and they're like. I am like lost. She's like, I don't think I can do all that. I'm like, well, you can't. You're new. I'm like,
right.
Let's just figure out a couple things you can do and put together a plan based on that. I'm like, but for me, I like that diversification because like direct mail is not pulling too good right now. It's really not.
Right.
Like, I've done several orders lately and they've been under 1%. One of them was like under 0.5%.
You think that's saturation of Medicare marketing? Mail?
Possibly, it's possible. It's hard to say. I'm sure that's got to be part of it. There's probably more direct mail Medicare insurance companies today than there were 10 years ago.
Oh yeah, there's more mail going out for Medicare today than ever before. I would bet my life on that for sure.
Yeah, and so, but like that's not working all that good right now. So what do? I lean into something else. You know what I mean? We're doing more work with you guys for that, because, and so that is really kind of the best way to explain my business is just, we're flexible, we're adaptable. We can go any direction. We're always going to be able to eat.
Yeah, no, I think it makes perfect sense. I'm trying to think if there's any side of this that we haven't, as we're kind of getting towards the end here, and I'm thinking back to our conversation that we had before. I mean, is there a side of this that we haven't gotten into that we talked about? Call centers. I
think we covered it in pretty good detail there. I think I really have a hard time saying one model's better than the other. I really look at it like apples and oranges.
Yeah.
And it's like, are you an orange guy or you're an apple guy? Like,
right.
But I do believe, if someone was going to go all in, let's say, start from scratch, and they wanted the biggest possible piece of the pie that they can get, I think a call center is going to be that more. Like for me, I started in the brick and mortar because that's how I was taught. I just didn't know anything differently. If I started over today, let's say I just snapped my fingers and it was all gone, but I knew everything I knew today,
right,
from scratch, I might start a call center. I might pursue that method first, just because I've seen what it can be for others.
Again, if I were to start an agency tomorrow, it would probably be all call center. I'd probably go completely virtual too, just because, again, that's what I know. That's what I built. That's what I operate every day, is a completely 100% virtual call center. There is no physical location. Everything's being done online. One thought I had too, before I got into kind of that thought, is when we were talking about the hybrid model, I feel like technology might accelerate that model where you could have a local face-to-face brick and mortar, but if someone calls you and they're like, hey, I just want to get on the project, your 3D projector, I just want to jump onto that, let's 10 years from now, let's get wild about what technology looks like, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you can have conversations where you guys both are like 3D in a room together and it's like a hologram and you guys can talk to each other and you're having almost a face-to-face experience virtually over the phone online. I think at some point, I don't know when, but I think something like that is probably not as far away as we probably think it is.
I mean, so, if you think about it too, like I agree. I probably think it's more around the corner than a lot of people think. Like, look at what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
We couldn't do this probably 5 years ago.
No.
Like, this wasn't a thing, like I didn't know about it. Like,
when did going live? When was that even? When did that become a thing?
I don't know.
It was like within the last 5 years, I think, dude. I don't think it's new. I mean, I don't think it's old. I think it's relatively new. I feel like
to get an indication of how far it can go in the next 4 or 5 years, look at how far it's come in the last 4 or 5 years. Like that's what really pops out in my mind is like, we're essentially almost like we're having a face-to-face conversation right now. Like it's as close as it can possibly be.
So my wife was watching Oprah. Oprah did like a bunch of interviews during the pandemic, and the way she set it up, even though she's not in the room with them, there's 2 rooms. They're designed identically. One where one guest is, one where she is. And she essentially has like this giant mirror in front of her. And like she's looking, dude, I'm telling, like if you look at this interview, like there's so many times where it feels like they are sitting in, like obviously there was probably a lot that went into this, right? Like this isn't something that like any Joe Schmo could pull off.
Right.
But it got my wheels turning when I saw Oprah doing these interviews remotely. I'm like, this is pretty close. I'm like, this is pretty close to sitting in a room with someone. Like you're in private rooms. There's nothing but that person right in front of you. You can see everything in real time. I mean, I don't think it's too far off. I really don't.
The chip in the head.
I'm going to project in your mind now. Is that okay?
I'm going to be like, okay, Glenn, I'm going to hit the chip and I'm going to access your thoughts so you don't have to verbalize them to me anymore.
Isn't that nice?
Who knows where this thing will go? Like, it's not going to stop. That's probably where we're headed at some point.
But I think that's part of the reason why I lean call center is because most call centers leverage technology way more than brick and mortar, right? So like brick and mortar, I see so much more of the old generation of insurance. Here's a stack of your your age direct mail leads, the B leads. These are 1 to 5 years old. Here's your desk. Good luck. Glenn Raw, like just classic sales, right? And like, our industry was really built on that, right? Like people hustling, people calling direct mail leads, people knocking doors. But the flip side is that's not where the industry is going. Like, so you have like the foundation and what we were built on, and then you have where the future is going, and they are like opposite ends of the spectrum. And now you do have people that leverage technology and brick and mortar. I think Justin Brock is probably a great example of that. I know he does. But there's a lot of brick and mortar. And I think that's at my core to kind of wrap up, this whole conversation. I think that's what pulls me to call center is technology, convenience. I think it's what the consumers most of the time want, especially if we're talking something transactional like Medicare. They want to get on the phone and be done with it as quickly as possible. They don't want to travel somewhere. Some of them might have trouble traveling. The pandemic is a great example of people not wanting to meet with people face to face. So that's where at the end of the day, if it was like, Glenn, here's $1 million. What type of agency are you starting? I'm definitely going call center for sure. But that's not to say it's the only model, and it's not to say that it's the best model. It's just my preference.
Yeah. I think my final thoughts to kind of wrap up too would probably be, it's such an interesting conversation. Like one aspect that I think I forgot to mention, and I'm wondering if you'd agree with this.
Yeah.
Because of the overhead, the increased overhead with a call center, I do feel like it's higher potential reward in terms of where you can grow to, like I mentioned earlier, but I do feel like it's a lot higher risk too. Like it's a much higher risk of failure.
So you've mentioned this a bunch, right? You keep mentioning that call centers are high. I'm not trying. In my mind, the reason call centers are a lot higher overhead is because usually if you're comparing brick and mortar non-LOA versus call center LOA, call center salaried agents, brick and mortar downline agents, in that comparison, 100% you're right. There's a ton of overhead. If you have 50 employees on payroll, that's a ton of money that you're forking out every 2 weeks.
That's a lot of payroll.
Yeah. So is that kind of when you keep talking about, do you think that's kind of the core of the overhead, or is there other overhead that I'm not thinking of? Besides,
I think you probably need, unless it's a virtual call center, like you mentioned, the virtual call center, that's obviously a different story. But when I think of a call center, I think of a big room with cubicles, right? And a bunch of people sitting at the cubicles. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily the way it's.
What's a brick and mortar? 50 people in brick and mortar, 50 people. I mean, it's a building. I think a call center could utilize office space more efficiently than a brick and mortar, potentially.
Yeah, that's actually probably true. I mean, I guess it depends on. Okay, let me ask you this.
Okay.
Cost per acquisition. Which one's higher?
That was brought up. Yeah. So that was brought up. And I do think it's completely different. And I would say that a call center has a higher cost per acquisition. There's no doubt in my mind that sitting face to face with someone has a higher closing percentage.
Yeah.
That's what I told the guy this morning. Like I mentioned, I talked to this agent this morning, brand new, could go any direction. I told him, I said, if you sit down face to face with someone, you could easily close more than 20% of your leads. If you're selling exclusively over the phone, you're probably going to close less than 20% of your leads. And so if you're closing 25% of your leads and you're sitting down face to face with someone, obviously that means, the higher your closing percentage, the lower your CPA goes. The lower your closing percentage, the higher your CPA goes. So
right.
That's a really valid point when we're talking about overhead. If your CPA is double, for example, because you're in a call center, that's overhead. But I think the combination of things of what you typically see, the salaries, the higher CPA, the potential cost of technology, computers, whatever it is, I think all of those things stacked up. Now you're looking at massive overhead compared to just a brick and mortar office where you just have a desk, here's your desk,
For sure. So I think it can be comparable. Like, let's say you're, depending, like when you're looking at maybe an organization that's an equal size and one's a brick and mortar and one's a call center. I'm sure that there's areas of that, that are probably comparable in terms of that actual overhead.
For sure.
I feel like I do feel like it's probably easier to fail in the call center model. Like I feel like it is a higher risk. I do believe that. Maybe I'm naive. Maybe I'm wrong about that. And I don't have as much experience with the call center model. I feel like with the brick and mortar, it's probably a little bit less. I mean, unless you just stay in bed all day and do nothing, or I don't know what people do.
Right.
Like
it's possible.
Because technically, like if you think about a brick and mortar, like if you're just talking like, and this might not be even brick and mortar, this might be independent versus call center agent, but like, someone can set up in their basement, and then grow into a brick and mortar or something like that. It's really interesting. The way I look at it is I feel like it is very, very different. I think they both have the unique challenges to them that are only to that side, brick and mortar as well.
Right.
And I think they both have their positives and negatives. But yeah, I mean, I do believe that there's a lot of advantages of the call center model, like you said, and the technology of it, the efficiency of it. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. And I think it's probably going to get, I shouldn't say this. This is like shooting myself in the foot. It'll probably get harder to do the real traditional brick and mortar in the next.
I think so. I don't think that's wrong at all. Like I said, I think the technology trend is trending us to remote, to virtual, away from face to face. I don't think that's wrong at all. Again, I want to take a moment. If you're watching this, if you're listening to this, we'd love to hear from you guys. We've spent over an hour now talking about the different business models and the pros and the cons and what works, what doesn't work, and our opinions. Obviously, again, we're biased. We have our own reasons for being biased the way we are, but we'd love to hear from you guys. So as we kind of finish this episode up, feel free to comment below. Subscribe to the Six Figure Medicare Agent channel. You'd be crazy not to. Christian has a ton of great content on that channel. And moving forward, you guys, on Taco Tuesdays, we are now going to be split streaming between our Facebook groups, which I'm super pumped about. So
I love StreamYard. It's cool.
It is. Awesome. Well, hey, any other final thoughts before we sign off here, Christian?
No, I think we covered everything. I think this is a really good episode. I think it's going to be made for a great.
I think so too. And I think this is a debate that's going to be ongoing. I think this is something that people are always going to be, kind of butting heads about. What's better? What works? What doesn't work?
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts on your end?
No, I think I kind of wrapped up. Like I said, I lean towards call center. I lean towards virtual. I think that's the direction that the industry is going. But, I think again, the final line is what works best for you. You need to figure out what works best for you and for your agency.
Yeah, I like that, and I agree.
Cool.
Guys, thanks for watching. This was a fun episode. I enjoyed it. And if you're watching the replay, let us know your thoughts. We'll both reply. And if you're watching the replay on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Do it all, and then buy Six Figure Medicare University while you're at it. And
buy all the leads from Lead Heroes.
All at once.
Buy it all.
Yeah. All right, guys.
See you next Tuesday.